Alrighty trainers, TaeganAdventures here. So, by the time you're watching this video, Cresselia would have made its return in Tier 5 raids in Pokémon Go. Now, some of you may remember that Cresselia was first introduced into Pokémon Go right around the time that Gen 4 was introduced, which was around like November of last year, around the same time as Halloween 2018. But for the benefit of the newer players who have just joined us this year, or the slightly less experienced players who maybe do not know as much about the Pokémon Go battle system yet, this video will help you along on how to adequately battle a Cresselia in Pokémon Go, as well as the group size and potential counters you may want to bring to your next Cresselia raid if you see one. Now, Cresselia by itself is a pretty tanky Pokemon there. As you can see, Cresselia has a pretty high defense stat of 258 base defense, 260 base HP, and very middling 152 base attack. Not the best in the game, but not the worst we've seen. Of course, needless to say, Cresselia functions very well as a Psychic type tank, and Cresselia, being a Psychic type, will be weak to Ghost, Bug, and Dark types. When you think of the best Dark types, of course, the first Pokemon you think of would be Tyranitar. Tyranitar has insane bulk, attack, and DPS. I've mentioned this enough times in the channel, so definitely Tyranitar with Bite and Crunch would be a pretty good pick for a Cresselia. Smackdown and Crunch works really well if you have the community exclusive move in Smackdown. Otherwise, Bite and Crunch would be your overall best pick for a Cresselia. Of course, we still have Weavile, which is a bit more of a glass cannon. Weavile does have pretty good DPS, but it has pretty mediocre defense and HP, so I wouldn't really recommend using a Weavile, but Weavile would be a very good pick if you so choose to go for the really big DPS. Now, of course, those aren't your only two Dark types. We still have Houndoom, which of course does provide a pretty good resistance against Fairy type. Cresselia does get two coverage moves in Moonblast and Aurora Beam, both of which are either neutral effective or resisted by Houndoom. Unlike the other two Dark types, Tyranitar and Weavile, which take super effective from Moonblast, Houndoom actually takes neutral effective from Moonblast, so definitely Houndoom with his secondary fire typing does come in useful during certain matchups like in a Moonblast or Aurora Beam Cresselia. Now, of course, when talking about your staple Ghost types, definitely Gengar and Giratina Origin come to mind, but you can also use a Mewtwo with Shadow Ball. It's an EX exclusive moveset, I know, so it's pretty hard to get your hands on right now, but Mewtwo with Shadow Ball definitely, especially with Mewtwo's bulk, it's going to have really high TDO. The DPS is probably not the best we've seen because of its Psychic type moves being resisted by Cresselia, but nonetheless, Shadow Ball would make up for it, especially with Mewtwo's really good attack stat of base 300. It's going to do a lot of damage with that Shadow Ball. Now, Gengar, again, with Shadow Ball is one of the best, if not the best, Ghost type move in the game as of right now. So definitely Gengar with Shadow Claw or Lick as its fast moves and Shadow Ball as its charge move will do pretty well against a Cresselia, although you might want to look out for a Cresselia with double Psychic moves. It's going to hit really hard on Gengar, being super effective, and Gengar being a glass cannon, it's going to get squished by Psychic type moves really easily. Now, Giratina Origin would make a good substitute for Gengar, not being weak to Psychic type attacks and all. Of course, we are looking at Giratina Origin form. In this case, Giratina Altered form is pretty much a downgrade from Giratina Origin form, so Giratina Origin form with Shadow Claw, Shadow Ball, definitely going to be a very good attacker, especially with Giratina's bulk and decent attack stat. Now, Bayonet and Sharpedo get honorable mentions here because of their typing, as well as Bayonet's really good moveset. Shadow Claw, Shadow Ball, again, similar to Gengar, is a pretty good moveset. Although this time, this particular moveset is going to be a bit more accessible because Shuppet is more common than a Legacy Gengar or a Giratina Origin, which is a very rare legendary. Sharpedo is on this list because of its typing in Dark and Water. It does resist Cresselia's Aurora Beam, but it does still take a lot of damage from Cresselia's Moonblast, especially with its really low defense. It's not going to survive that long in battle, so use these with caution. Now, Alolan Muck also gets a quick shout out here because of its insane bulk. Look at that HP stat of base 233. Now, I know its attack stat is not the best we've seen, and the DPS is also lame in my opinion, but due to its bulk, it should have pretty good TDO overall. Alolan Muck, I would say, is a pretty decent choice. Now, of course, the bug types in Pokemon Go have the short end of the stick. They are not really good, although Pinsir and Scizor have pretty good stats, especially with Pinsir's move pool here of Bug Bite and X-Scissor. X-Scissor being a pretty good bug type move in the game right now. Likewise, with Scizor, it does have a lot lot of resistances. Given the steel typing right here, it resists basically all of Cresselia's moves here, especially with that really good attack stat. Scissor with X-Scissor is going to do a lot of damage, although you might want to use your Dark or Ghost types instead. Since Cresselia is pretty tanky, it would take about 6 to 7 trainers to actually beat. If you're, let's say, a high level player above level 35, probably that reduces the number to about 3 to 4 trainers. But for the average player that's about level 30, you would need about 6 to 7. So now that we've gone over Cresselia's counters, let me give you some other information about Cresselia. Cresselia, like I've said earlier, is a psychic type tank. Obviously, for a tank, it's not going to have really good offenses. Now, case in point, let me just give you some quick numbers here. I've run through some simulations and calculations. Basically, bam, chart up here. I'm going to move myself out of the way. Basically, this chart shows psychic types against a Machamp with counter and dynamic punch. Now, as you can see, Cresselia does not have the best DPS overall. And despite being a tank, Cresselia doesn't have really good TDO either. You can see that Mewtwo takes the cake for the best DPS of any psychic type attacker. Even with Cresselia's really high defense, there's still other psychic types with really good bulk, like Lugia. Even Mewtwo. Mewtwo does have really good bulk as well, even with its mediocre defense and HP stat. Definitely Mewtwo is capable of dishing out that consistent damage. Even Lugia will work just as fine despite its really low attack stat. Bottom line here, Cresselia is not the best psychic type in the game. It's even outpaced by its fellow psychic brethren like Alakazam, like Mewtwo. Even Lugia, which is also a pretty tanky psychic type, still outpaces Cresselia. So Cresselia, not the best. If you've noticed, Cresselia bears Aurora Beam, so it might be useful in certain situations like battling a Dragonite. But sad to say, Cresselia is also outpaced in that department when pitching Cresselia, Alolan Ninetales, and Mewtwo up against a Dragonite with Dragon Tail and Outrage. Definitely Alolan Ninetales being a fairy type. Aurora Beam is basically the run to the middle here for Cresselia. I know you may find a certain niche for it when battling a Dragonite, but as we've seen here, Mewtwo with Ice Beam, although Mewtwo does not have Stab Ice Beam, it still does more DPS than an Aurora Beam Cresselia. And in certain cases, it performs similarly to a Cresselia in terms of its TDO. Even Alolan Ninetales, which is typically not seen in battle as much. Definitely there are better Dragon Slayers out there than Cresselia. So Cresselia, definitely not the best in battle in gyms or in raids. But if you want to talk about PvP, actually, Cresselia is pretty useful as a wall in PvP. I'm not so sure about the exact statistics because I do not have them myself. But from my own experience, I can say that Cresselia is a pretty useful wall, especially with Moonblast to cover up for its dark type weakness. Potential applications: if you see a Tyranitar, just send in Cresselia with Moonblast and you can easily take care of that dark type. Beware, however, Cresselia is pretty much unusable in Master League, where other psychic types run rampant, like Mewtwo with Focus Blast. Mewtwo is pretty up there in terms of usage. So definitely Cresselia is pretty mediocre. I would say it's definitely, well, it's usable, definitely, but not as viable as, let's say, a Mewtwo or a Alolan Ninetales, or basically most of your typical bread and butter psychic ice or fairy types. It's pretty situational, basically. So yeah, that's going to be it for my Cresselia guide here. Hopefully you have a better idea on how to battle with or against a Cresselia, and hopefully I've given you a bit of insight as to how Cresselia may or may not be useful in Pokemon Go. That's going to be it for today. I'm going to be signing off right now. This has been TaeganAdventures, and I shall see you in the next video. Peace out.